Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
That's Kara Swisher. She's, of course, the co-founder and executive editor of Recode and one of the journalists who interviewed Zuckerberg this week. Kara, good to talk to you.
How you doing, Chuck?
I want to start with the statement and your interview with Zuckerberg. It feels as if, when I read the statement, it read to me like a PR shop wrote the statement. That they're trying to preserve, they're trying to stop the bad press. They're not trying to fix the problem. Am I being too harsh in that assessment?
Well, they did the breach of trust thing that everybody said over and over again. It's a breach of trust. It's a breach of trust. They all repeated it. Sheryl Sandberg did too. So obviously that was written in a PR speak. It's a nice way of saying we let down the users instead of just saying we let your privacy go all amok all over the internet. I think that's what I would have said. I think they did announce some things that they should have done years and years ago, which was little things. I can get into specifics, but they announced some things that they were going to go investigate these things. But a lot of it, has to be much more specific and much more severe in terms of taking back this data, which I think is not gettable anymore. It's out in the wild. It was 7 years of this that went on where they gave data to third-party developers. And what's interesting here, the Cambridge Analytica thing, people are missing it. It was not a breach. Facebook gave the data to these developers.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. This is the business. The entire premise of Facebook is we are the product, right?
Yeah.
Is that you and I are the product?
I don't use Facebook. Yes, exactly.
I don't either, but yes.
That's the idea. And so their whole business is based on advertising and attention and everything else. And what they did is they had developers they wanted on the platform very early to make a very vibrant network, a social network. And so they gave them, I keep calling it a candy trove, but they handed out data like candy. So these people would come in, make great apps, get people excited about the platform and engaged in it. And then it was sort of this virtuous circle for Facebook and users, too, because they got a lot of cool stuff they wanted to play with. And I think the issue is they didn't monitor where that data went and who was using it. And so it didn't keep in mind, and I did talk to Mark about this, how did you not know bad actors could misuse this, and why weren't you policing it enough? And I think that's really the issue.
It's funny, is that didn't he, it seems as if he just went back to his own motivation of why he wanted to start the Facebook, right? Which is to find out more information about more people.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I think was very, he said, I didn't sign up to be the one to decide what should be kept and what should not be kept. And I was like, you kind of did sign up for it since you created this. And I think that was a really interesting thing, is that right now Facebook's got to take responsibility for, as I've been saying for a long time, for the platform they build, get their hands around it. And if they can't, who's going to do that? And I would not recommend regulators doing it because they can't even order lunch together in Washington. So it's a really big question of who's going to monitor this if not Facebook.
Let me ask you this. What is, it's funny. It's like, I think Tim Cook knows what he wants Apple to be and what he wants the company to see it as. I think Jeff Bezos knows what he wants Amazon to be and what he wants the public to view Amazon as. I actually don't know. What does Mark Zuckerberg want the public to see Facebook as, and what does he see what Facebook is?
Well, I think it was interesting because he kept backing away several times in the interview that, I don't want to sit at my desk in California and make these decisions. A community should decide this. He built the community, he made the community, he runs the community, he owns the community, and so he does have to step up more and say what his values are and what is wrong, what can be done and what can't be done. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley, are not the people you mentioned, are loath to do that. They're like, let 1,000 flowers bloom, let anyone do what they want. And the problem with that is anybody does what they want, and especially bad actors. And this is a perfect system to be taken advantage of by those bad actors.
Apple and Amazon are the outliers, right? I mean, they used to be criticized. Steve Jobs was criticized for the fact that he wouldn't let other people into his orbit sometimes.
Yeah.
Developers and things like that.
This is not Apple's business. Advertising is not Apple's business at all. They're in a great position because they're just selling iPhones. You know what I mean? Their devices are used to use all these apps, but this is not their business, and so they have nothing to. In this case, it's nothing to do with Apple. Is
Facebook ever going to be the same, or are we going to start using MySpace metaphors?
No, I don't think so. It's an enormously powerful package. There's 2.2 billion people on it. And it's a very vibrant. They own Instagram. They own WhatsApp. They've got all kinds of things. I think the issue is this a real crisis for them in the Microsoft moment? If you remember when Microsoft started hurtling downward around the monopoly issues, Microsoft did not pay attention to them, and it resulted. Now, it's still a very powerful company, but it certainly isn't the
They're not one of the big four.
For sure.
That's right. They're not.
Yeah.
It's more like the way we used to talk about IBM.
Right, exactly. And so I think that moment was terrible for them because they were arrogant. And Facebook has got to fix itself and has got to take the responsibility and take this very seriously rather than it just being, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, and what is what we need to know next.
It is Friday, the 23rd of March of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays because, folks, we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Okay, good. Well, I guess they're fitting the saddles on the nuclear bombs right now because you're going to get a bunch of John Bolton masks, and we're going to ride those bombs right down into the ground, just like in Dr. Strangelove. John Bolton is the walrus. And if you know anything about Celtic and Wales culture, and even Cornish culture, the walrus is the harbinger of death. So just letting you know. Okay, well, that's not all that's happening in the news. I mean, John Bolton coming on board. I was thinking, if this was a DC comic franchise, what's happening in the White House, I think we would call it the Injustice League. I know it's obvious, but I had to do it. I had to say it. And with John Bolton coming on board, it really emboldens the Injustice League. Mick Mulvaney has officially stopped the investigation and case against payday lenders as under, he moonlights, and he's at the Consumer Protection Bureau, and the payday lender case was one of the first that the CFPD took on, and Mulvaney said, we need competition in our country, and what better way to achieve that than to basically violate what were known as usury laws and run a banking operation like a mob operation, because that's what he knows. That's great. I have not been a big fan of Mick Mulvaney, and one of the reasons why is that, when you start off as a Tea Partier, I think that might inform where you might end up in the world. More news coming out about this troubled kid out of Austin. It's so hard for them to say he's a terrorist. And that's what he was. He was a terrorist. But apparently there were some possible big tragic mistakes that occurred. The cops are going to take the guy down at his domicile. and they had called for an ambulance to stand by because they didn't know, if they were going to have their own people hurt, the surrounding community hurt. Certainly the perp, you want to take him to court. So if he's hurt, you got to get him to a hospital, right? So called up the ambulance, and apparently in that area there was a firehouse nearby, so their EMTs would be taking care of it. So as they were dispatched, the part that they didn't hear was, wait at the firehouse until we call you. And they went to the house of the Austin suicide bomber and knocked on the door and said, we got a call for EMT and from this house, or for this house. And one of the roommates who had answered the door said, no, I didn't call. And he called to the back of the house, said, hey, did anybody hear a call for an ambulance? And somebody in the back of the house, as they were going out the back door, said, no, I didn't. And that might have been the Austin suicide bomber. And that was then, shortly after that event, he recorded his 28-minute, what the cops call confession, on his cell phone. And he got away. And then they were able to track him through triangulation from cell phone towers. So that could have been really bad. But basically the EMTs there, I don't know if through bureaucratic blunder or what, could have, they tipped the guy off. And so I guess, when you're being dispatched, keep the radio on. Who knows? Okay, well, video of the guy in Sacramento, the unarmed black man, Stephen Clark, shot in his grandparents' backyard, talking on a phone. Cops said that, we thought he had a gun. Of course, the dispatch said that he had, that the perpetrator, apparently, that they were looking for, who was like breaking into garages or trying to, had a crowbar. And so the cops' excuse is that, we thought he had a gun. The video from their lapel camera, body cam, showed them coming through the side yard into the backyard and yelling, essentially, get down, get down, get down. And as soon as Stephen Clark took the gun away from his ear, they shot him 20 times. Don't look at the video. I try to avoid it myself because I don't, sometimes I don't really need to see that. But it happened quicker than I thought it would, and I got sucked in. And brutal. And I think this goes back to the argument that I've had for a long time, is that the police academies and police departments are putting their employees on edge. They are paranoid about everything and everyone. And there is a unwritten law: shoot first, we'll figure it out later. Your life is too important, and I can understand that. The cops are already making excuses. Oh, we come across these kinds of things all the time. We don't know. Listen, there is a constitutional right to be able to be on your property without the cops coming in unannounced and shooting your grandkid in the backyard. What if he had a crowbar in his backyard? Why is that now a crime? Why is that now a danger? Why couldn't he have been using the crowbar to be doing some demolition in the backyard for his grandparents? I'm just saying, what if he had a crowbar? Which also begs the question. If he had a crowbar, it wasn't a gun. So why shoot the guy 20 times? I don't know. I was taught some takedown techniques when I was a bouncer, in which I never had to use a weapon. And that meant even if the person coming at me had a weapon, whether it be a crowbar, a knife, or a gun. So I don't understand. How is it that I can check IDs at a bar? I don't need a gun, yet I have been attacked, but I didn't need a gun to defend myself and the establishment I was security for. How is that? Well, first of all, I didn't fear everybody's ID or everybody that I was checking ID for. You ever get stopped for not making, turning on your turn signal, making a left turn? Ever notice the cop as he's walking up to your car where he has his hand right on his gun, ready to pull that baby out? And I can understand, because there have been cops who have been killed coming up to a car. But paranoia begs danger, and that's where we are. And this is exactly what Cambridge Analytica used, was paranoia and fear. It's one of the biggest selling devices. Ad agencies have known this since ad agencies began. The components: sex, fear of death. Those are the big components. Sex sells, fear of death, and, fear of death with a racial component heightens it in certain targeted markets. One of the most dangerous occupations is being a roofer. Does a roofer fear every ladder that he or she climbs up? Every single ladder? No, you take care. But you're not primed to destroy the ladder if it jiggles a little bit either, are you? So, paranoia and fear reaps tragedy every single time. Okay, what are we going to attend to today on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? In the Bistro Cafe part, where we will start... Oh, well, of course, Zuckerberg's really sorry for having that Microsoft moment. Really sorry. And I from what I've been hearing from my friends in Silicon Valley, is it looks like Zuckerberg will actually sit in front of government authorities in public, as he should have been doing all along. Okay, and then on the rest of the menu, as I mentioned, we start in the Bistro Cafe. Trump's Council of Economic Advisors doesn't seem to care about the 146,000 Americans who will lose their job because of Trump's trade war. He doesn't care about American steel. He cares about a district in Pennsylvania so that he can say, oh, my influence got that guy elected. Sorry, didn't work. Trump bizarrely threatens to veto the Omnibus spending bill his budget director said he'd sign yesterday. And the Russians are already meddling in Texas elections. Right now, at this very moment, it hasn't stopped, and it's ramping up. We ought to do something, you would think. Oh, you know what? Let's shut down the House Intelligence Committee on the Russia-Trump connection and go after leakers in the Intelligence Committee. Let's do that instead. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table, where a major case alleging Trump is violating the Constitution moves forward, as Donnie Two Scoops receives a court summons at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And 60 years after her iconic performance in the Hitchcock masterpiece, Kim Novak, and one of my neighbors, by the way, reveals the highs and lows of Vertigo. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, If you look to the right-ish of the page is the chat room link, and Kelly Lincoln, our rowing girl, monitors that quite diligently throughout the day. So if you need to contact us or want to, that's a good way to do it. To the left-ish of the chat room link down there at the bottom of the page are our contribute and donate buttons. A very important feature because we are unable to do this without you, and thank you for your generosity. You could follow us on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and we also have a Facebook presence, but you know how Facebook is now. But, you know, we're kind of there. And I can be followed at Justice Putnam on Twitter. And you can also, which might be important because this is a multimedia operation here, and I post a show notes and links diary on Daily Co's. So you can find me on Daily Co's as Justice Putnam. And I often forget to mention that you should check out Black Co's. Comes out Tuesdays and Fridays. And mostly now every other Tuesday and most Fridays I'll be doing a poetry section there. I curate a poem and write a little introduction. And but the more important body of Black Co's taken care of by Chi-Town Kev, Dopper, Denise Oliver Velez, and Cepheus on Fridays. That's where the important and God's work is done. So check it out. Tuesdays and Fridays. Okay, why don't we get on? You know what? Podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be had initially by way of Spreaker, and from there it emanates out to iTunes. Hopefully iTunes soon. We're still under review, but tune in. You can listen. Tune in. And Stitcher, and I hate to say iHeart, but they're still, they went bankrupt, but apparently they're still got some momentum and working going on. But you can find podcasts for the show on those platforms. And pretty soon, I hope, keeping my fingers crossed, iTunes. I'll be on the iTunes registry. I hope. Okay, so first offering up here at the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Mm-hmm. French 77. I think that's the perfect cocktail. If you were into that. It's kind of early in the morning, but you know what they say, it's noon somewhere in the world. Well, Trump's economic advisor says 146,000 jobs lost is, just really a small number. Don't worry about it. It's just a little ripple. Barely noticeable. Don't worry. And this is out of Share Blue Media, and Tommy Christopher has penned this piece. Trump's impending trade war, I think it's fully blown now, is going to cost over 100,000 Americans their jobs, but one of Trump's top economists thinks it's just a small price for American workers to pay. Look, if you're going to have a trade war, you got to find some people that will put some skin in the game. And what better way to have skin in the game than to, skin your workers? And Donnie knows exactly how to do that. Kevin Hassett, chair of Trump's Council of Economic Advisors, the CEA, testified at a Senate Budget Committee hearing this week where Virginia Democrat Tim Kaine, and former vice presidential candidate, by the way, pressed him about the effects of steel and aluminum tariffs that Trump imposed on a whim. Did the CEA recommend to the president the tariffs that were announced on steel and aluminum? Kaine asked. I should jump in. The Netroots Radio Style Manual normally precludes us from ever applying the P word, president, to Donald Trump. But this is a direct quote from Tim Kaine during an official government hearing, so I had to say the P word. I apologize if any kids were in the audience listening to this. Parents, don't judge us, please. Not that way. Hassett told Kaine that his recommendations to Trump were confidential, but offered his own analysis. There's been a pretty big literature that shows that in the industries themselves there's a little bit of an increase in employment, Hassett said, but he added, in the downstream steel-consuming and aluminum-consuming industries, there tends to be a little bit of a loss. those two things in the literature have been a small net negative. You know what? I got to tell you, some economists live in a little bubble, and they really, they have their own jargon, and they look at their fingernails. They're not dirty, I'm telling you, but they know exactly what's going on with the workforce. Kane then read Hassett some of the startling figures from the Trade Partnership Report on these tariffs. The report states that the tariffs will result in at least 146,000 lost American jobs. And that number does not even include job losses from retaliation to Trump's trade war. Or as Trump likes to say, reciprocity. Reciprocity. You know where else you heard the term reciprocity? That's right. Clear and present danger. Harrison Ford had a clear and present danger that he had to attend to. They had to go in there and get that drug dealer's money. Because, the president's friends were killed on the yacht, and he wanted that. It was his money. Reciprocity. Other estimates of short-run job losses from Trump's tariffs range as high as 190,000, but the long-term effect of Trump's trade war would be a global recession, according to Moody's analyst Mark Zandi. But apparently, Hassett considers that a small net negative. World calamity. We're doing a much larger work here. World calamity, they're small potatoes to what we have planned. All accents and imitations, potential or possible ostensible imitations of any public figure, represented here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is always in this reporter's opinion. Hassett's characterization of these job losses as small is particularly galling in light of the fact that when Trump is not bragging about the revival of the coal industry that created only 130 net jobs, that's 130. There's no 130,000, no 130 million, no. 130 net jobs in his first year. He's taking credit for jobs that don't even exist. But the jobs Americans will lose in Trump's trade war are very real, and to those Americans' families, there's nothing small about it. Travis Geddes prepared this next offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I just noticed this as I was beginning to do the final preparations for today's read, and looks like Trump's threatening to veto the spending bill that he promised to sign, putting the U.S. on a path to the second government shutdown of his term. And, of course, Joan McCarter on Wednesday had prophesied that. She's almost like the Oracle, but without the poisonous gases that makes one delirious. White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, I told you he wears a lot of hats, said that the president would sign the $1.3 billion omnibus spending bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives just yesterday, and that Trump must sign it by midnight tonight to avert a shutdown. Let's cut right to the chase, Mulvaney said. Is the president going to sign the bill? The answer is yes. But Trump threatened to blow it up this morning in a tweet, because that's how public proclamations are, imparted from on high. I am considering a veto of the omnibus spending bill based on the fact that the 800,000 plus DACA recipients have been totally abandoned by the Democrats, not even mentioned in the bill, and the border wall, which is desperately needed for our national defense, is not fully funded, Trump said. Okay, now he's concerned about the DACA kids. No, he's not. This guy, I think this guy really knows he's going to jail. We're running just a tad behind here, but it is Friday, Blue Moon Spirits Friday, so we're all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, so let's just take it easy, okay? We'll get through this. Finishing up here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article out of the Star Telegram, a McClatchy operation, by the way, down in Texas, and Anna M. Tinsley caught this. So nearly 50 suspicious emails, including 24 with ties to Russia, recently were sent to the Texas Democratic Party trying to register for political gatherings that could have led the senders to the party's state convention in Fort Worth. But party officials say this move, the latest example of potential Russian interference in U.S. elections, was unsuccessful. We don't know what their goal was, said Glenn Maxey, a former state lawmaker from Austin who serves as Legislative Affairs Director for the Texas Democratic Party. Russians are attempting to get into voting systems around the country, but this system caught it. They tried to register, and they failed. No Russians are coming to Fort Worth. What about their fellow travelers, though? Okay, well, this is how it began. Republican and Democratic precinct and senatorial conventions, which lead to delegates being chosen to attend their party state convention, are scheduled on Saturday. Maxey recently decided to double-check online registrations for Democratic conventions. When he looked at the list of registrations that automatically had been rejected, he found 48 emails from people who did not cite a Texas address. 24 of those emails had Russian domain names and Russia-based IP addresses. If these folks are attempting to go on any political site and get in, it gives another data point for folks trying to influence elections, Maxey said. For whatever reason, they went to this system, and I have no idea why. The Star Telegram sent emails to the Russian email addresses asking whether the sender was trying to register for the Democratic Convention, but no one responded. You got to do it in Cyrillic. Come on! Everyone knows that. The fact that they are using Russian email addresses suggests they are not really trying to hide anything. A political science professor at UT Dallas, Robert Lowry, said. So maybe this is just an attempt to create some confusion and sow doubt in the overall integrity of the process. Well, that's known as active measures, which they have been endeavoring for, the beginning. The Russians will stop at nothing to put their candidates in office. Texas, and specifically Tarrant County, would be of interest. 2 years ago, during the last election cycle, no one would have ever thought Texas would remotely be in play for anything purple or blue. That has changed. And that would be of interest to anyone who is adverse to change. And more Democratic officials said that they believe the convention will be able to prevent any interference. I think we have a good team working on it now, but you never say never. That is why people who are planning our convention are hypervigilant to any type of interference. Should Russians try to hack into our system, they would be caught quickly. Well, have they been caught? And has it been quick? I think the answer to that is still out. But why don't we go to our break and mull it over for a little bit, and we'll come back, go through the weather from around the world, and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour. This is a Radio Labor special report recorded on Thursday, March 22nd, 2018. I'm Marc Belanger. Today is World Water Day, a day set aside by the United Nations to remind people of the importance of safe, affordable water supply. The issue has made headlines recently because Cape Town in South Africa has announced that its access to potable water may run out next year. As well, the World Water Forum is being held in Brazil this week. The global union which has been doing the most to highlight the problem is Public Services International. The PSI represents some 20 million public sector workers in 150 countries. I talked to David Boys about water supply. Mr. Boys is the PSI's Deputy General Secretary. I asked him if access to safe, affordable water was getting better or worse.
Well, it's impossible to say that it's more or less. It depends on country. It depends on even city. You see that Cape Town in South Africa is about to declare zero day when their reservoirs all run dry. So I would say for Cape Town, it's become more difficult. Is that an impact of climate change? Is it an impact of mismanagement? Is it an impact of lack of investment? But for Cape Towners, absolutely more difficult. In some countries, in some cities, it's becoming better because there is investment, there is proper management, there's a lot of work being done to ensure that the poor get access to water.
Safe and affordable drinking water has been declared one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. What are some of the challenges faced in achieving this goal?
Let me just say, Mark, that the attainment of that goal is a big victory for a lot of social movements. It's built on the victory in 2010 of having the UN General Assembly declare access to water and sanitation as human rights. The challenges, of course, of universal access is you have to invest a lot of money to bring safe and affordable water to people's houses. And there's well over 1 billion people on this planet who don't have safe and affordable water in their house. In fact, there's probably even many more when you look at how many cities where the water is used for washing and showering, but not for drinking. It's not potable. So one of the main challenges, as always, is who's going to pay for it, and especially because those who don't have access are mainly those who also don't have a lot of money. So the UN is regrettably falling under the false promises of PPPs, the public-private partnerships, which, if anybody's following what's going on in the UK these days with all the bankruptcies and the revelations of how much, for example, the water companies are overcharging and overpaying their CEOs and overpaying their shareholders. So the biggest question for us on the one hand is where's the money come from? And the second one relates to who's going to manage for what purpose, because there is a big difference between managing for profit and managing for people and planet.
Do you have any examples of municipalities which have taken back their water supply from private contractors?
Well, as the world knows, the biggest remunicipalization, we call it, is Paris. And this is the heart of the two monster private water companies. Why they did it? Because it was a commitment made by the mayor to deliver better services to the citizens. Now, there's been hundreds of cities taking back their water, whether it's Berlin, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's Hamilton. It actually is a growing wave. I'm not going to say it's tsunami right yet. Now, why do they do it? And it's actually mayors and city councils of the left, of the middle, and of the right. And of the right, the arguments for them is, well, it's cheaper. You don't have to pay profits. You don't have to pay shareholders. You reinvest the money in your own system and not export your money to who knows where, for what purposes.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us to the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Well, we always like to begin with weather from around the world, and when we begin with weather from around the world, we like to begin along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees, and we are under an active winter storm warning, and that began late last night and will be continuing at least until 1 o'clock, maybe a little bit later. That's right, a mix of rain and snow. and it's been so pretty around here. All the plum blossoms are with their beautiful shock of pink have been blooming everywhere. Just lovely. It's springtime, and now I hope they don't all drop. But that's how it goes. And let's see, winds are out of the south-southwest at a negligible 2 miles per hour. It is raining right now, though radar does show icy rain all around me right now. I'm in the protected area from the ridge. But let's see. Yeah, well, visibility is less than half a mile. I was going to say I'm unable to see the ridges near me. And looks also like the freezing level will be definitely below 1,000 feet, and I happen to be a smidgen above that. So maybe I don't want to walk on the streets. They could be icy as I speak. Okay, so rain all day. Winds will pick up from out of the southwest to 10 to 15 miles per hour. They'll change from the south-southwest tonight at a brisk 5 to 10 miles per hour. And let's see, we expect a high of 45. I don't think where I'm at we'll get that. Tonight we're going to be a very chilly 25 degrees. Thank you very much. My fruit trees will love it. Thanks. I appreciate it. Tomorrow, yes, we'll have even more rain tomorrow. We're expecting at least a half inch today, and looks like more than a half inch tomorrow. And winds will be out of the southeast tomorrow at 10 to 15 miles per hour, which is, some people hate the wind. I love to sail in it. We like wind. So, okay, pressure is dropping right now at 29.92 inches. I mentioned the visibility was less than a half a mile. Humidity is 75%, though I'm looking out, and it's raining and snowing right now. So I think humidity is a bit higher than that, but that's just me. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. And these people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. London is 55 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 44 and cloudy. Rome is 52 and fair. Kiev is 34 and fair. Kabul is 56 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong, 63 and clear. Tokyo, 48 degrees with showers in the vicinity. Sydney, Australia, 66 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California, 46 and partly cloudy, though they still have a weather of airborne water that drops precipitous amounts, flooding and the area and causing landslides. So take care. And New York, is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And a bright, sunny day it is. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. And these people planted these personal weather stations that they purchased somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. I failed to mention earlier that music here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is provided by the lovely ingenue Frances Livings, and she resides down in Southern California and performs all over the Southland. So if you happen to be down in Southern California, check her out. She gives a great show. Her band is tight, as you can tell. Okay, because, they're pros on the highest level. And you can also purchase her work and check out her written work as well, and art and poetry and whatnot. And those links are provided on my diary that I do post on Daily Kos. So check that out as well. Okay, so starting off here at the chef's table, out of Think Progress, Rebecca Etralgo has penned this. Attorneys General for the District of Columbia and Maryland have expanded their lawsuit against Trump to include Trump in his personal capacity as a businessman. Hey, you don't want to divest from your property? Okay, we'll treat you like one. Now, as part of the process, they sent an official summons to Trump at his home, which happens to be the White House, located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and lawyers for Trump have 21 days to respond. Now, the lawyers that Trump now has, I think that their response is going to be on Fox News. I don't think it's going to be in any written response to the courts, because we're out of the courts now. We're in full-blown court of public opinion mode, and I think that's all that they're going to do from here on out. But we'll see. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the suit by D.C. and Maryland says that Trump is violating two separate constitutional clauses: the Foreign Emoluments Clause and the Domestic Emoluments Clause. And we all know about those emoluments clauses and what makes them unconstitutional. And the foreign one means you can't take money from foreign agents or whoever. And the domestic one prohibits you from receiving gifts or emoluments from federal government or states. Now, we already know that many departments of the government have spent huge, vast sums of money at Trump properties, and Trump gets to pocket all of the profits. So what makes this one different than other emoluments cases is that those other ones only address Trump in his capacity as president. These have been allowed by the judge, because the judge said, we can't, I can't, it doesn't work the way that you've filed this. The judge gave D.C. and Maryland some time to revise their case and expanded it to include Trump in his capacity as a businessman, and the judge said, yeah. So some legal experts say that the lawsuit may have a better chance of moving forward, especially now that it addresses Trump as a businessman. Well, I got to tell you, karma is neither good nor bad. Karma is just karma.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here in the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. This is out of the Boston Globe. Jake Coyle penned this. Now, Kim Novak is a neighbor of mine. She does live on a 240-acre ranch, fairly close. I see her around a bit. There's a lot of what we like to call on the West Coast. There's a lot of people around my area, a lot of Hollywood people who have decided to either move here and retire, or move here as having a domicile, and then when they go to work in Hollywood or elsewhere, they fly away. So last fall, on her ranch in Southern Oregon, Kim Novak found herself doing what she calls my own Me Too painting. Novak, now 85, had recently broken her left wrist, her painting hand, but was compelled enough to give it a try with her right. Seeing woman after woman come forward with their stories of harassment stoked Novak's own recollections. She titled the result a swirling, vibrantly colored abstraction of a menacing face looming above a woman called A Time of Reckoning. In that period, the same things went on. I never told those stories, but my painting has it all, said Novak, speaking by phone from her 240-acre ranch where she lives with her husband, Robert Malloy, a retired veterinarian. It was very cathartic, she continued. I'm sure just like the gals of today found it cathartic to tell their story. Novak recently granted her first interview in several years to mark the 60th anniversary of Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 masterwork Vertigo. The initial reviews for Vertigo were tepid. The box office was disappointing, but Vertigo, entrancing, dreamlike, deranged, has steadily grown in reputation over the years to become one of the most widely acknowledged masterpieces in film. In 2012, it even displaced Citizen Kane after a 50-year reign as the top film on the Sight and Sound Critics poll. Vertigo, a movie overwhelmed by the sensation and fear of falling, keeps climbing higher. As with the film's rise, Novak's performance alongside Jimmy Stewart has similarly surged in stature. Film critic David Thompson has called it one of the major female performances in the cinema. Francois Truffaut, in his famed interviews with Hitchcock, who was critical of Novak in the role, tried to convince the director he had it wrong. I can assure you that those who admire Vertigo like Kim Novak in it, Hitchcock responded. You know, sometimes I feel a little bit like Zelig, because I used to live right next door to Francois Truffaut's daughter, Laura. And before Truffaut passed, he would visit quite often. Now, I never delved into any deep conversations with him because, he was a neighbor. So, you know your place, especially when you're a cinephile like me, and I was doing all I could do just to keep from passing out. But I for some reason, Truffaut didn't like Kim Novak's performance in Vertigo, and I got to tell you, I always thought it was a quintessential performance. Now, let's see here. Novak's performance in Vertigo is exceptional, not only because it's twofold. She plays both the mysterious, suicidal Madeline and Judy, whose similar appearance to Madeline mystifies Scotty, played by Stewart, the obsessed detective who had trailed Madeline before her apparent death, but because it's so representative of how male fantasies are projected onto women, in Scotty's elaborate efforts to recreate Judy as Madeline, Novak recognized Hollywood's own manipulations of her. I identify so very completely with the role because it was exactly what Harry Cohn and what Hollywood was trying to do with me, which was to make me over into something I was not. Now, Novak said, and she was referring to the iron-fisted Columbia Pictures founder who had contracted her. In the beginning, they hire you because of the way you look, obviously, and yet they try to change your lips, your mouth, your hair, every aspect of the way you look and the way you talk and the way you dress. So it was constantly fighting to keep some aspect of yourself, trying to keep some of you. You feel that there must be something in you that they like, and yet they want to change you. Wow, sounds like a relationship. That struggle makes Novak an important forerunner for today's actresses advocating for gender equality in the post-Harvey Weinstein Hollywood. Signed to be Columbia's successor to Rita Hayworth and groomed as a blonde bombshell to rival Marilyn Monroe, Novak often recoiled from the way she was packaged. She refused to change her Czech last name and ahead of Vertigo insisted on a higher salary. She had a 3-year run as the top female star, but left the movie business in 1965, returning only occasionally. What good is it just to be pretty, she asked in 1955's Picnic. Maybe I get tired of only being looked at. Novak's last film was 1991's Liebestraum. After she presented at the 2014 Oscars, many online, including Donald Trump, insulted her appearance. She responded that she would no longer hold herself back from speaking out against bullies. Now, Hitchcock wanted Vera Miles for Vertigo, but Miles became pregnant shortly before production. Though Cohn thought little of the script, he agreed to lend Novak out to Paramount for the film. When she arrived, Hitchcock was not immediately impressed. And, Hitchcock did warm to her. Now, Novak did say that she didn't experience what Tippi Hedren experienced in terms of sexual assault from Hitchcock. And I think a lot of that had to do with Kim Novak's insistence and presence. Though she does confess, though not naming names, that it did happen to her. And it wasn't Cohn, Harry Cohn, who many have insisted that he insisted on sex from several female stars, including Hayworth, who had spoke about it in her 1989 memoir. But Novak said that Harry Cohn was an actual and absolute mentor to her, and she didn't get it from him. But that doesn't mean that, he didn't harass and sexually assault other women. But she said that she has wonderful memories of Vertigo. She praises the freedom Hitchcock gave her to interpret her character, and rhapsodizes about Stewart as a co-star. He was just the greatest person of all. And sometimes, you can see that through an actor, that who they are comes through in the acting. And even in Stewart's bad guy personas, there was something, a good guy about him. And that's why his bad guys tended to be a little scarier than most. So, Kim Novak, 60 years since the making of Vertigo, one of the great movies of all time, and you should check it out if you haven't checked out all of Hitchcock's oeuvre. In spite of his own crazy sexual peccadillos and whatnot, still a great movie director and an artist. Okay, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio broadcasts on today and throughout the weekend, and we'll visit with you on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio throughout the day, and as I said, throughout the weekend, there's plenty of live feeds that will keep you up to date on breaking news as it happens. So we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pas fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.